It's another beautiful Sunday afternoon. This is Rubbin Minds. Welcome. My name is Ebuka Obiuchendu. Thanks a lot for joining us. It's a very tense time across the country. The last week has been quite heavy for a lot of people, with news from just across the country. It's not very pleasant. I think paramount on people's minds has been the Kuje jailbreak, which has left a lot of questions unanswered. Wondering how that was able to happen and how we are not sure if that will be the last one, considering how many jailbreaks have happened in the last couple of months. So that's sort of taking politics to the back burner. And of course, Lagos has also been in the news in the last couple of days with floodings, and it brings back the question of how a supposed megacity should be functioning. Yes, we do know that the population is in overdrive, and people migrating to Lagos for better opportunities continues to happen. But the fact that we are hearing stories about cars sinking and people almost losing their lives as a result of rain in 2022 has left a lot of people wondering why we keep asking these questions every year. But in all of this, I think all of these issues are still tied to government, and with government comes politics. And of course, the elections in 2023 are still heavy on people's minds. There's a lot of conversations about the presidency, but there's a lot more than the presidency that comes with governance. So we're going to be trying to dissect that and see how we can get some answers, hopefully before campaign proper begins for the general elections next year. I have here with me Akesishin Adedamola Shiwaju. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So let's dive right into it. Like with all the issues I mentioned, it keeps, the conversation keeps going back to the fact that maybe governance has failed Nigerians, which is why a lot of this is happening. Insecurity continues to be widespread, and elections in Nigeria have a tendency of making those things go into overdrive. What does good leadership look like to you? Because people are wondering, as the elections are coming, what should we be looking out for? And I'm not just talking about the presidency. What should we be looking out for in candidates? Because all the conversations these days seem to be about zoning and where the person is from and whose turn is it, as against what we should be asking rightfully.
Well, that's a very important question in this journey that we are on. In my honest opinion, good leadership, where we are as a country, must be a leadership that inspires hope. So you talk about all of the things that are happening in the country at this time. There's a sense of despair. And people, a lot of people are just up and leaving because they look like there is no hope. And so the first thing I think that a good leadership will portend in 2023 is a leadership that is able to inspire hope. They say that people can live without food, but no people can live without hope. A hope that it doesn't matter what today is, it's going to be better tomorrow. It's also important that, to me, good leadership in 2023 must be a leadership that has empathy. A leadership that can feel what people feel. As a leader, and this is not only politically, but as a leader, they say people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So it's very important. I think it's one of the things that anybody that is coming to the affairs, to the ends of affair in this nation, in my ward, in my state, in my local government, across board, must be able to empathize with people and feel. And there seems to be a disconnect between the leaders and the led. And until the led see that you feel what they feel, they'll never trust you. So
I guess the next question is, how do we get that out of the leaders? Because you talked about hope there. 1999 was a great time for a lot of Nigerians. Democracy was coming back. There was a lot of hope that things were going to change. And I mentioned change there now because 2015 also came with some more hope that, there was a new ruling party, things were different, there were a lot of promises made. But we're back here now, some will say even worse than we were in the past, with regards to what we expected. And is hope really enough? And if hope is enough, and you're talking about empathy, how do we then make sure that we are able to hold people accountable when they get in there, as against what they tell us before they get in there?
Right. So you ask, is hope really enough? If hope is not enough, but it's a starting point, because every election cycle what they peddle for us is hope. I'm going to do better than the last person. You haven't actually seen the person do it. It's hope. So, but you see, inspiring hope comes at varying degrees, and that's why I'm hammering on it. But you see, I think that one of the things we need to understand is that there has to be an equilibrium in governance between the government and the governed. And that seems to be where we are getting it not quite well in Nigeria. I explain. There's something I call the bane of the Nigerian people. It's both a blessing and a curse to us: resilience. Nigerians are very resilient. And that is what makes us go outside of the shores of this country and they say we're excelling. Because we're adaptable, you know, we can excel. You go through all of the rigors of growing up in this kind of country and, you know, you still thrive. But the flip side, it also makes us move on easily and adapt to things that are not acceptable. And until, you know, my people in Yoruba say that usually a goat does not bite until you push the goat to the wall. But you see, the power of resilience is in Nigeria. When they push you to the wall, you break the wall and escape. And that is, you know, it's a blessing, but it's also a bane in our life. We must find, you know, it's any leader that can get away with anything will continue to get away with it until the people say, hang on a minute, this is not what we signed up for. And I also think it is important how we have that engagement. It doesn't have to be confrontational. It does not have to be riotous. You know, look at the Arab Springs. Everybody thought this was going to be it, but how many of them have survived beyond that? We must look for intellectual, and that is why empathy on the part of the leadership is also important. Okay. We speak, you understand where we're coming from. You don't have to agree with us, but at least you empathize with us enough to see our position. Okay. And I think it's on both sides. Okay,
I think we're joined now from our Abuja studios by Oke Epia, who's a public affairs analyst. Okay, thanks for joining us. And I want to ask you about, you know, the conversation around, you know, zoning and regions and all of that. On the one side, people have continued to argue that it's taking away from the conversations which matter, which is about, you know, what the people want. But on the flip side as well, there's the constant conversation about, you know, how Nigeria needs to be more regionalized with governance. Maybe we need to tap into that more. And the restructuring conversation is one that a lot of people don't like to have, but seems inevitable at the same time. What are your thoughts on how we can move this country forward while drawing from what already exists? I mean, we can't deny the fact that we come from certain places, and maybe, especially with the number of people we have in this country, 200 million people is no joke. We need to decentralize properly. How do you see that ever happening?
Thank you, Bukan. Pleasure having you on the show this afternoon. I think that the first place to begin is to make the point that Nigerians should be very conscious of the antics of politicians, especially during electioneering seasons like this, to divide us. And so they throw up dogmas like ethnicity, region, zoning, and all of those to attempt to curry emotions, to curry passions, and to make Nigerians seem divided. You know, but Nigerians are not as divided as they make us seem. You know, there are countless, you know, ways to explain this. You know, being conscious of that antic, however, does not mean that these are not our realities. Our realities is that Nigeria is a multifarious, multi-ethnic, you know, multi-religious society that needs to have some form of fine balancing. You know, otherwise, I mean, the forces of centripetalism would pull us apart. So there must be something that would try to bring us together. And so that is why you have the contraptions around or about zoning and all of that, you know. But that is just what they are. I mean, they are contraptions, and we can engage them with some sense of reasonableness. You know, what Nigerians should be looking out for really is, which is paramount, you know, who is able, what sets of leaders are able to deliver the goods. And what are the goods we talk about? You know, the sad story has been that we are not able to get good governance. We're not able to have services delivered to us by those who have elected into office. And why is that so? That is so is because we have not been able to sufficiently and effectively demand accountability from government. So I am saying this to throw back to your first question, even though it was not to me, but I just wanted to make the point. Leadership, that inspires hope is not enough. It's certainly not enough. Leadership that takes advantage of the resilience of people, of citizens, is crooked. We need a leadership that is able to deliver accountability. A leadership that says to citizens that, look, I am your leader. I would lead by example. I would lead from the front. And if there are failings, I would take responsibility for the failings. And I would ensure that those failings are not repeated to the best of my abilities. But the reverse is the case. We have seen failings. You started off the show with how, the very, despondent situation we are in security-wise, which appears to be making politics, take the back seat. But this is not new. We have seen these situations rise up again, arise again and again, almost since the beginning of this current administration. But Nigerians have become so tolerant. Nigerians have come to accommodate just too much that this becomes like, it's become like part of us, and so leaders seem to have that feeling that, look, they can always get away with these things. And that is why I think that the current consciousness amongst Nigerians, especially young people, should be sustained and harmonized to a sense of, beyond just the candidates, which those, energies are built around. It should be harmonized to be able to, beyond 2023, get our leaders to be accountable to citizens.
I want to jump on that now. Sorry to cut you in there, but I actually,
for which they are elected are.
Sorry to cut you in there. I just wanted to, because that was my follow-up question.
Answer to that.
Sorry, that was my follow-up question to you, because, this conversation about young people and anger has come up a lot in the last couple of months now. There's the conversation about, is this anger channeled properly? And you talked about harmonizing it there, because there's always this conversation about, well, elections are not won on social media and all the anger is there. But on the streets, the people who actually vote don't seem to reflect, what we see, on social media, or what you might call upwardly mobile young people. How do you harmonize that sort of anger, for want of a better word, post-2023, and use it to hold government accountable? Is this an issue with people not being angry enough? Is it an issue of the institutions not being there for us to be able to hold government accountable? Because like we always hear, the center is a little too strong for anybody to be able to do anything even.
Right, that's a brilliant question. And let me use this opportunity to debunk that recurring talk about elections are not won on social media. This is all a social media buzz. So I listened to some fellow on TV the other day say it's a pop, and with a little prick, it's going to pop, and all of this will fizzle out. Yes, that's an opinion, and we should debunk that, because we have seen that galvanizing can start virtually, and then it can lead to something really meaningful. We have seen cases, we have seen experiences before, even in this country. We saw that happen in the Arab Springs. We have seen that happen in this country. In 2020, we know what happened. How much of all of that anger that had built up over the years, led Nigerians to pour out onto the streets. So demands police reforms and all forms of campaign against bad governance. So these things can actually translate, into results. So we should vehemently resist this talk about this is social media stuff. This is elections are not won on social media. We have to do the stuff that we have to do on social media. And then the strategy is, how do we translate it to the reality, to the real world, and how do we sustain it, which is what your question is. Yes, the anger is perhaps not sufficient, because we need to, show a little more anger, as long as it was within the realms of law, and orderliness. We have rights to express ourselves in this country. We should use those rights. We should essentially be able to channel that anger into a sustained and effective demand for good governance. And the question around how do we do that away from the candidature of certain individuals, contesting for office in 2023. If you ask me, what we need to do is to build up ideologies, is to build up a mindset that goes beyond the candidates.
All right.
Build a mindset that goes beyond electing or focusing on the presidential elections, focusing on the governorship elections. In other words, focusing on just elections around the executive, arm of government. One critical component of the electioneering process that we haven't quite spoken enough about, and I think we should do a lot more on that, is the legislature. The individuals who are going to be in governments with the presidents, with the governors in the states. Why are we not focusing on them? Do we know them?
I'll come back.
What do we know about them?
All right, I'll come back to you.
What are their inclinations and ideologies?
All right, I'll come back to you.
So if we do not,
let me come back to the studio now with you, Makesi. Going from what he said now, I think the one thing I feel is that we seem to want to hold government accountable when they get into office, which is good enough. But because of, like I said, maybe the institutions are so weak that we don't even have channels. And like I also said, the center is so strong that there's even nowhere to penetrate to hold government accountable. How is it possible to start from the election season to hold people to their promises and tell them that if you don't do this, this is the consequence? Is there a way for that to happen from the election season?
I contested for primaries
Yes.
in May. And so I am able to speak from a practical point of view. And my opinion after the experience that I've gone through in the last 14 months is getting a PVC is doing a little too late. Because getting a PVC does not get your favorite. It does not necessarily get the brightest and the best on the ballot box. Getting a PVC just gives you the opportunity to vote the people that the system have trusted on you. And so if we're really, and I've also listened to this debate about Twitter and all of that. I'll give you an instance. When I was running for my primaries and I lost by 1 vote, that's a story for another day. The people that had to make a decision, and I was very active on Twitter, I was like, oh yeah, go. I went, the first day I attended a ward meeting. It is a totally different ball game from what is written on Twitter. And that is not to disparage what is going on Twitter. And then I kept having this discussion with my friends. One day I said, you know what, let's go. I contested in Augusta. Let's go to Ijebu. They were talking, we're going to do. By the time we got to the meeting, on our way back, I was like, let's have a debrief. Might not be the same thing, no. So there is a world of difference. And if we want to really take the horn by the bull, we must join a political party and be part of the process. All of these things affect our life. If I'm campaigning to you as a ward chairman, and I tell you, I brought 250,000 for you, you're probably going to look at me like, what exactly are you going to do for our constituents when you get to office? You know why? Because you don't need my 250,000. But if nothing exists in a vacuum. If you don't do it, other people who are interested in my 250,000 will do it. And it will not matter to them what promises I'm going to keep or not. What am I bringing to the table? And there begins the problem. Because you cannot hold them accountable. Why? Because you don't have the power to put them there during the primaries. And so the people that can hold them accountable are the people that have the tickets, the party identification that can vote in the primaries. And those are the people, and that is if we want to really do this, everybody must become more, politically conscious and active. Join a political party. I hope you join mine, but you don't have to join mine. Join one, be part of the process, and that way it's easier for you because they need you and they know. Politicians, they know they need people in the party because you give them the ticket, and getting the ticket of the party is 60% of the job. And so if people that can ask them questions, can look them in the face, are more politically involved, I think that would help us to also hold them accountable.
Okay, well, thank you very much. This is a conversation that I know will continue to go on for quite a while. Elections are about 7 months away.
Yeah, indeed.
It's a long journey, but it's also a short journey. They say a day in politics is a week in a lifetime. So hopefully people are listening. And I know the argument about joining political parties is very, very key. And hopefully people will take that to heart. And moving forward, we are more politically conscious. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you very much as well, okay, Pierre. We'll take a break now and we'll be right back. Please stay with us. A lot of us complain about how nothing works in Nigeria. There's all the conversations about security, about, you know, the agricultural sector, sports. There's a lot of disillusionment around the country. But the one thing that seems to be thriving beyond imagination is the entertainment industry and music in particular. We have artists suddenly conquering the world, winning awards that only seemed like dreams far away today, and it's a very sort of heartwarming sign that, you know, things can still work even if it's in spite of government. In the last week or so, 2 documentaries have come out on streaming platforms celebrating the journey of the Nigerian music industry, and it has brought more spotlight to the industry, you know, where it's been, where it's coming from, and where it's probably headed. We're going to be starting our conversation right now on that. I'm joined now by a pioneer in the industry, someone who is a huge part of, you know, the conversation around Afro beats and the Nigerian music industry, media entrepreneur, Dayo Diwanadine. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Ebuka. Thank you. And Baraka Desala to you and everyone.
Thank you very much, and I wish you, of course, the same. Hope you're enjoying the holiday. Let's go right into it. Like I said, we have 2 documentaries that have put the music industry back in the spotlights, and you, of course, are heavily featured in them. How have you received this? You know, knowing where you were when all of this started, how the scene was, if there was even a scene, you know, at the time, and, you know, where we are now, where suddenly Grammy conversations seem very normal. You know, how do you take all of this in?
Well, thank you, Ebuka. It's something we've always envisioned, talking about myself and Kenny. A big thank you to High Chief Dr. Raymond Dokwesi, who also believed in this vision with us. We're doing our days of Ray Power. We've always envisaged, you know, I mean, we're the giant of Africa for a reason. Music emanated from Africa. And we've always said, look, if Jamaica, a country of 3 million people, can sell reggae to the globe, we, a nation of 200 plus million people, should be able to sell something, whether it's juju, whether it's we should be able to sell our music, our culture. We should be able to take it abroad. I've always envisaged this, so I'm not surprised. From the days of King Sunny Ade to Fela to Two-Face, we've always been trying to get this, you know, the world to accept us musically, language-wise. So I'm very, very elated. I'm very happy now. It didn't happen overnight, Ebuka, contrary to what people may be thinking that, oh, our boys just blew up overnight and now. No, it was, foundations were laid. You know, we stand on the giants, on the shoulders of giants, you know, giants like Fela Nicola Kuti, who have been taking this music abroad for decades. King Sunny Ade, who was nominated for Grammys 4 times. Femi Nicola Kuti, who was nominated 7 times. So there are people who have preceded, you know, like John the Baptist. They preceded, you know, the Burna Boys and the Davidos and the Wizkids, you know. So we must give them credit. So I'm not surprised, but I'm very, very elated and I'm very happy.
I like the fact that you said, you know, it didn't happen overnight. But I wonder, you know, because we've seen these documentaries, but without even seeing the documentaries, a lot of us kind of know how this has evolved. Do you think there was a moment where things changed? For, you know, this sort of sudden global explosion? Or was it sort of, like you've said, a slow projection? Because, I mean, there's conversations around, okay, was it the Banj moment? Or was the collaboration with whoever internationally? Was there a moment you think things changed or switched?
No. Look, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with 1 step. And it would be disingenuous for me to, or anyone to ascribe, you know, the success of this to one particular person or genre or particular time and say, oh, it was in 1999 or it was the band. No. There were people who preceded, who were chipping away at the blocks, the stumbling blocks. There were people who were chipping away. Two-Face's single was the first song to be featured in a global movie, African Queen. So Idris Abdul Karim was the first artist to carry the Olympic torch. So Nice performed at Nelson Mandela's 90th birthday in London. The band performed, his music was played heavily during the Olympics in England. So it's been a multiple a multitude of factors, but we must say and thank the Nigerian, population, the Africans, for embracing the music first of all. If you're not successful at home, you're not successful abroad. But we thank the Nigerians that, in diaspora as well, that continue to play this at their birthdays, play this music at their weddings. But most importantly, I think a great deal of this success must be given to social media. The world has become a global village. One song on TikTok reaches everybody around the globe. So I think the advent of social media, TikTok, WhatsApp, and what have you, has made the world a global village. So you can release your song today, and tomorrow it's in Los Angeles, as opposed to 1999 when Kenny's music, we had to physically carry these CDs to LA, carry them to London physically, because there was no way to get the music across.
Yeah.
But we must thank God, and I must say congratulations to all the artists that are doing well, from Burna Boy to Davido and Kiss Daniels. They're doing us very proud, and we're very happy. But I must say, Ebuka, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Mark my words. Another is going to come who is going to beat them hands down. I said, now we're just talking of nominations. Now when that next artist comes in the next 3, 4, 5 years, they will be the mainstay performing live at the Grammys, not just outside or just receiving the award and not just being nominated for International Best Act. They will be the main focus globally, and that's going to come surely.
And I think that's what we all pray for. We hope, things continue to grow that way and also spread to other parts, other sectors of the country. But, you touched on something there that I want to ask about because, like you said, you had to do a lot of things physically. You fought a lot of the piracy drama, with regards to how CDs were done back in the day. And today it's all different. Like you said, you put your song on social media and it's everywhere. But the one thing that we've always talked about is the fact that we need structure in the Nigerian music industry. Record labels were a big part of that, how you had to go through the system, get signed to a label, and then they do your PR and promote you and all of that. Today it's a little different, and people are starting to wonder, does structure still matter, and what does structure look like today, with how the music industry has evolved for you?
Well, it still very much matters. I mean, look, for every artist that succeeds, you have the manager, you have the dancers, you have the producer, you have the publicist, you have unfortunately, in this our climb, the artist believes, he or she can be everything. You'll be the songwriter, you can be your own manager, or at worst, you get your brother to manage you. Yes, in this part of the world, we've not really gotten that structure. We've not gotten it right. And it's very hard to get our artists to believe that, look, you can't be the songwriter, be your own producer, be your own promoter, sell your own records. You might get it, you might be lucky and get 1 song or 2 songs or maybe 1 album or 2 albums. But down the stretch, if you want longevity in this business, if you want, to stay on top of the game for a long time, you need to have a record label, you need to have a proper management, you need to have an entertainment lawyer, you need to have a team. And that's your structure. It's not just your record label. You have to have a team behind you, pushing you, so you can live, you can have your own time for your own creativity. You can have time to, write your songs, go into the studios and do what you know how to do best, which is writing or singing or performing or whatever it is. So the structure is still very important, although our artists have found a way to circumvent that. They just enter the studio, come up with a hit song, put it on, on social media, and bam, next thing they're performing. But that usually leads to artists that you call flashes in the pan, a flash in the pan. They'll come out and within 1 or 2 hits, next year you don't see them again. The ones that are doing well now, look at Wizkid. Wizkid has been around for over a decade. From Empire Records to, you have to have that structure. And he has one of the longest serving managers, Sunday Are, who has been with him for over a decade. So that's constant, managerial ability, having someone to, have his back has enabled him to last this long in the business. Davido is approaching a decade as well. So there's no such thing as overnight success, but you do need to have that team in place. You do need that structure.
Yeah, and I hear you, because I wonder sometimes, how you're able to handle all of the artist label drama, which we still kind of see, to be honest, with a lot of people, you know, and which is why I asked about the structural side of things. You know, you were on the other side of the entertainment industry. You were not a performing artist, so you owned the label, you promoted artists and all of that. How do people today get to navigate that, you know, because it's still sort of a thorny issue with record label owners or people who manage artists, you know. Do you think it's more seamless now than when you were sort of at the helm of things in music?
Well, I think it's just about the same. It's just evolving.
Why?
Different headaches, different years. It's still the same thing. Look, when you pick up a talent, somebody who you know can sing or can perform, someone that hasn't seen 10,000 naira before in his life, and within a month or 2 or 3 to 6 months is earning millions in streaming rights or revenues or performing, and somebody's paying 5, 6, 7 million for him per show. If the person is not well grounded, or has a good management team, or has a good family background that can keep the person level-headed, they tend to get out of hand. And eventually they start thinking, oh, I don't need this manager, or I don't need this record label. And that's usually what happens. And then they start surrounding themselves with what we call sycophants, yes men, who say, you don't need them. Just, you are the big star. Yeah, you don't need them, man. You don't. And of course, they do away with their record label. They do away with their lawyers. Oh, I don't need the lawyer, man. I'm a big star now. And that usually leads them to pitfalls.
Yeah.
And before you know it, the shows fade out. I mean, look, we're a nation of 200 million people. Once you be your star, you become a target. So everybody wants to be the next Burna Boy. Everybody wants to be the next Two-Face or the next Wizkid. So there are a host of talents waiting in the background that want to succeed. So nobody dances forever. You have to yield the dance floor at some point. Michael Jackson, imagine what Michael Jackson was those days. Janet Jackson. Where are they? They've yielded the floor to the new crop of stuff. That's going to happen eventually, but we pray that these young men, they listen, they get the team right, and they remain humble. It helps, when you become a star, that's when you need to stay as grounded as possible, so you can continue to do what you know how to do best.
On a personal note, do you ever look back and wish this was when you were thriving, considering how crazy the industry is now, whether it's with revenue, with publicity? You took us to the Grammys and we were all dreaming of opening that door one day. Now the door is open, Do you ever look and just wish, why wasn't it my time?
The temptation is always there. The temptation is always there to think, but you have to be, you look, everything with its time. When we were there, we rode high too. We had the Hummers and the Range Rovers, and we rode high and we enjoyed it.
Yes.
But like I said, there comes a time when you must yield the floor. The next generation, look at the world of football. Look at what Pele achieved. Look at Beckham. When we talk of soccer legends, but look at what Ronaldo and Messi are doing today. And believe you me, in another 5-10 years, someone is going to come who is going to dwarf what Ronaldo. So you can't beef that. You just have to move on. You have to accept that this is the role God sent me to play, and you accept it. And I'm happy with it. I smile when I see any Davido, and I go abroad, and you go to Macy's or any store abroad, and Nigerian music is playing. You go to any wedding, even in India or Jamaica, they're playing Afrobeat. It gives me a lot of joy to have been able to play a small role in that. And I accept that role as a precursor. We were sent ahead to lay this foundation, and I accept my role, and I live with it. And I have no regret.
Very well. Before we go now, you are also a politician now. You are a pioneer in this industry. As quickly as you can, how can we sort of translate this build and success in music to other sectors in this country? Because everybody wonders, why is this one sector thriving so much, and why does everything else seem to not be working? What can we do? What can we learn from what the music industry is doing?
Look, the important thing is don't be dependent on government. The reason Nollywood succeeded and the reason why our music industry is succeeding is because we didn't wait for government. Yes, it's better when the government is able to provide an enabling environment, but if it's not available, look, like the lady said earlier, resilience. Nigerians are resilient. necessity is the mother of invention. When hunger whack you, you go enter studio by yourself. Whether na 50 naira you get or 1,000 naira, you go enter studio, create something. Look at what Daddy Shoki has been able to do with his life. Look at, what Two-Face has been able to do. So the way forward is don't wait for government. Go ahead and do what you need to do. Sell yourself, sell our culture, sell our, whatever it is that you need to do to put food on the table. But legitimately, it will put, when we started this thing, music was for dropouts. My father almost disowned me. Like, what? I sent you abroad to go and read. You want to do music? But look at it today. But we believed in the vision. We believe, wait a minute. We've seen it abroad. We've seen, mega stars come out of music. We've seen people, sing and make, be able to feed their families and make millions. So we just said, we'll stick to it. It will, it will turn out all right. And look at it today. Even doctors, dentists, everybody wants to sing these days. So, once you say, look, you can always ask for government help. It's always good when government is able to help, but you can't wait for government to do everything for you. Yeah,
very well. Are we expecting a documentary from you too?
It's in the works. Kenny's Music is coming up with something. Okay. They say if you don't tell your own story, somebody will tell it for you.
Exactly.
So yes, we're cooking up the Kenny's Music story, and that should be out very, very, very soon.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to that. And thanks for inspiring a lot of us, whether we're music or not. I mean, you pioneered a lot of things, whether it's on TV or in music and just lifestyle generally. And a lot of us are here today because of all the great things that you and your partner have done. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Buka. And we are very proud of you as well. We passed the baton over to your generation, but you're not letting us down. You're making us very, very proud. I, for one, am one of those who's very, very proud of you and your exploits. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. We'll take a break now and we'll come back. Please stay with us. All right, welcome back. If you're on social media or in any workspace, I'm sure you've heard the term Gen Zs and how they're radically changing what it means to be a worker in this generation, and a lot of feathers have been ruffled. Wondering how to handle, a new generation that is changing the workspace. I have here with me Goke Balogun. He's a HR professional and co-founder of So Fresh. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for
is this a myth or is it actually a fact? This Gen Z tag now about how, what we traditionally thought it meant to be an employee is changing so much, where they are holding employers even more accountable and sometimes ruffling feathers much more than we're used to.
So I don't think it's a myth, and at the same time, I think there is a lot of exaggeration about the impact or the effect, or more like a reaction because the older generation did not expect it, so it's coming as a surprise. But it's not a myth, and if you just look around, the world is changing at a very drastic pace, pace. Yeah. And so they're born in the internet generation, there's globalization, there's a lot of independence and, talk about liberalism, equality, and this is what is shaping their worldview. There's also just generally speed. When I look at my kid and the speed at which they have access to information, when they're doing their schoolwork and all of that. So a lot of things have changed, and so their mindset is very, very different. It's interesting that before, this, the section we're talking about Afrobeats and football. Again, the career models these people are open to. It's now very normal to say, I want to become a footballer, I want to become an influencer, I want to become an artist. It's very normal conversation people have. So a lot of things have changed, and that has also impacted the mindset of others at the workplace.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere, I'm not sure if it was by 2035 or so, I'm not sure exactly the year, that a third of the jobs that would exist then do not even exist today. That's how quickly they're changing. Because you mentioned influencer there, for example. Yeah. It wasn't a thing 7 years ago.
Absolutely.
But it's a full-time job now for a lot of people. But is that a bad thing, though? That this generation is changing the way we see work. People have also argued, is it really a Gen Z thing, or did the pandemic affect a lot of our reasoning around how work should look? What do you think it is?
So first, it's not a bad thing, but then there also needs to be a balance into how the Gen Z, the people in that space are approaching work. Because yes, speed, changing work patterns and all of that, but there's also the space, the place of experience in managing that, that balance. And talking about the pandemic, what the pandemic did was it sped up the process of what we're seeing now. So if you look back on the internet, check back 3 years ago, 4 years ago, there's a lot of material about how the Gen Zs will come and change the workspace. And people did not really think it was going to happen this fast. What happened was the pandemic sped it up. Now you have remote work became very acceptable. Work changing dynamics became very acceptable. The tools with which we were working, people now even saw a lot about the importance of social media. It became primary and center. For example, my business, we did a lot more on social media than we did physically, and it's a primarily physical business, but we did a lot more on social media and online in about 6 months than we did physically. That completely changed the business model. So yes, the pandemic really sped up the process of remote work and everything that comes with it.
Yeah, I know I read somewhere that millennials are the first generation that are earning less than the generation before them. Gen Zs are probably going to be affected even more. The conversation around how the world is now, the economies of countries around the world are tanking left, right, and center. It's happening everywhere. Everyone is already talking about a recession that's definitely going to happen in a couple of months, whether it's in the United States or in a poor country. So how do you, as a HR person, let a young person understand that they still need to do all the work in a time when they're not earning as much as they should or as their parents did, which is where a lot of the Gen Z arguments on their side comes from, because they get a lot of flack, but they also say, well, we're doing all these things. Why should we do all these things when we're not going to get our money's worth? How, as a HR person, do you handle that psychology?
So I'm going to like to answer that in two parts. The first is employers must also become comfortable with Gen Zs not staying at work for a long time, because guess what? They have more options. So if they're doing a lot of this work and they don't feel compensated enough, they have a lot of options. There are people that are living in Nigeria and working for global companies remotely. And so that will continue to happen. Even immigration right now is becoming, I won't say simpler, but more accessible. People have a lot more information on how I can immigrate out of this country to this country and that country. And so that is going to continue to happen. So as an HR professional, especially, the more, older generation, I think the important thing will be to look at the workspace. How do you redesign your workspace to accommodate the changing times? People want a lot of flexibility with their work. People want focus on work-life balance. People also want, a lot of, they thrive where there's innovation and they're able to tie the work they do to something that is meaningful and purposeful. So the HR needs to look into designing the workspace right from the job interview. So the experience also matters as well as the workspace. So if you're going to get the best out, of the Gen Z, the people entering the new workforce, we need to redesign the workspace right from when they are coming in. So interestingly, my company works with a lot of the Gen Zs. About 60% of our workforce are the Gen Zs. And one thing I know the value is the value when the company is open to listen to their ideas and they feel like they are contributing and their work is meaningful. It's not just for them to work and just give instruction and I expect them to carry it out. Maybe that was what used to exist, but now they want to tie their work to something that is meaningful. They want to see a meaningful path to growth and development. And so we have to design the workspace to accommodate, those things to get the best out of them.
Yeah. So we're in a time now where we've seen unemployment and underemployment statistics in Nigeria at about 33% or so, which is beyond belief. And a huge chunk of that are young people, which of course the Gen Z generation makes up. How do you reconcile that with the fact that I also hear a lot of employers say we can't find people to employ, or people never stay, or I employ someone and in 2 months they've moved to another job. So it almost seems like there's work, but there's also a lot of people who can't get work. How's that happening?
So it's a big irony, and I think that leads us back to our educational system. So I think, in my experience, the educational system is failing because it's not preparing a lot of the younger people for the workspace, and also I think that because the future of work generally is changing, so a lot of the Gen Zs too probably don't want to do the work that exists. You know, you just said by 2035, a lot of the work that will be available don't exist today, and that is what they see. That's the future they're seeing. So you're asking them to do this, but they want to do something else. So some of them would rather leave that work and even go back, you know, go on Udemy, go on YouTube, and 6 months, they're changing their career. So we have to, like I said, employers need to rethink a lot about how the jobs are designed, the tools they are using for the job, and we need to take, you know, very seriously our educational system. How is it preparing people to come into the workspace? So what you find is that the people that get jobs, and, you know, it's almost like we are recycling the same set of people that are prepared for the workspace. So, you know, people now want to employ, and you're looking for someone that already has experience, so the person can move around and can move around quickly, where you have a large chunk of people that are not employable. So the employers just need to rethink their workspace. For us, for example, we have now really prioritized training, and within the first 2 years, you know, it's about upskilling, you know, whoever comes into the system. But again, you ask yourself, is that sustainable? Yeah. Can every company do that? So we need to go back to the educational sector and see how the curriculum and the teaching methodology support people coming into the workspace.
All right, on the final note now, like I said, the pandemic changed a lot of things. There's people who have still not gone back to the office. I have friends who they've said, oh, they've called me back, but I'm still working from home. Yeah. And offices are functioning in spite of that. What do you think is the future of work, especially in Nigeria? Can Nigeria thrive with remote work? And I know certain sectors probably can. I mean, the tech sector is booming. Some sort of retail spaces are also able to function that way. But is it sustainable? And do you think that definitely is the future in Nigeria?
So maybe it's the future, somewhere far in the future, but in the very immediate, I mean, beyond the pandemic, if you look at our own environment, from issues around power to internet infrastructure and so many other infrastructural challenges, I think the office still has a big place to play. And eventually, I believe it's going to be an hybrid. Some industries don't even allow for it at all. You know, that's clear. But for where it's possible, I think a hybrid will be the best option. And even where it's possible to go under remote, I believe that there is a place for synergy and just that physical, face-to-face happening in the workspace that helps work move faster and helps the chemistry within the workforce. So I'll say hybrid is where I think the future of work will be.
Thank you very much, Goke, even if you didn't bring us any so fresh juice. I had to call you out there. But keep doing the good work that you do. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and of course, Barakadi Salah to everyone celebrating out there. I hope you enjoy the public holiday, and please stay safe wherever you are, and I'll see you next Sunday.